The notorious Bandit Queen, who became legendary for both her acts of revenge on those who had abused her and her Robin Hood-like activities to aid the lower castes. After being imprisoned, however, she became a member of Lok Sabha, the lower house of parliament, where she continued as a champion of the poor and oppressed. Let us take a look on the life of Bandit Queen of India, Phoolan Devi. Phoolan Devi was born on August 10, 1963. She was born into Malla caste in a small village of Gorkakapurwa in Jalan district of Uttar Pradesh. She was the fourth and youngest child of Mula and her husband Devi Din Malla. Only she and one older sister survived to adulthood. Phoolan Devi's family was very poor. The major asset owned by them was around 1 acre farmland with a large but very old neem tree on it. When Pulan was 11 years old, her paternal grandparents died in a quick succession. Her father's elder brother became the head of the family. His son Mayadin Malla proposed to cut down the neem tree which occupied the largest patch of the 1 acre farmland. The teenage Pulan was outraged. She felt that since her father had no sons, her uncle and her cousin were asserting sole claim on the family's farmland inherited from the paternal grandfather. She confronted her much older cousin and taunted him publicly, called him a thief and repeatedly and over a period of several weeks showered abuse and taunts upon him. Pulan also attacked her cousin physically when he berated her for abusing him and making accusations against him. She then gathered a few village girls and staged a dharna on the land and did not budge even when the family elders tried to use force to drag them home. She was eventually beaten unconscious with a brick. A few months after this incident, when Pulan was 11 years old, her family arranged for her to marry a man named Puttilal Malla, who lived several hundred miles away and was thrice her age. She suffered continuous beatings and sexual abuse at the hands of her husband. After several attempts at running away, she finally returned to her family in disgrace. In retaliation for the public and private humiliation heaped on him and to teach Phoolan Devi a lesson, Mayadin Malla went to local cops and accused Pulan of stealing small items from him, including a gold ring and a wristwatch. The police kept Pulan in jail for 3 days, physically abused her and then let her off without warning to behave and live quietly without quarreling with her family or others. And Pulan never forgave her cousin for this incident. After Pulan was released from jail, her parents once again wanted to send her to her husband. They approached Pulan's in-laws with the plea that she was now 16 years of age and therefore old enough to begin cohabiting with her husband. They initially refused to take Pulan back. After Phoolan Devi's family offered generous gifts, they finally agreed to take her back. Pulan's family performed the ceremony of Gauna, after which a married woman began to cohabit with her husband and took Pulan to her husband's house and left her there. Within a few months, Pulan again returned to her parents' house. Shortly afterwards, her in-laws returned the gifts that Pulan's parents had given them and sent word that under no circumstances would they accept Pulan back again. She later claimed in her autobiography that her husband was a man of a very bad character. A wife leaving her husband or being abandoned by her husband is a serious taboo in rural India, and Pulan was marked as a social outcast. Shortly after her final stay in her husband's house and in the same year 1979, Pulan fell in the company of gang of dacoits. How exactly this happened is unclear. Some say that she was kidnapped by them because of her spirited temperament, estrangement from her own family and outspoken rejection of her husband and had attracted attention of bandits, while others say that she walked away from her life. In her biography, she merely says Kismat ko yahi manzoor tha, that she became a part of gang of bandits. Whether it was kidnapping or her own folly, Pulan had immediate cause of regret. The gang leader Babu Gujjar raped and brutalized her for 3 days. At this juncture, Pulan was saved by rape by Vikram Malla, the second in command of the gang, who belonged to Pulan's own Malla caste. In the altercation connected to rape, Vikram Malla killed Babu Gujjar. The next morning, he assumed leadership of the gang. Undaunted by the fact that Vikram already had a wife and that she likewise had a husband, Pulan and Vikram began living together. A few weeks later, the gang attacked the village where Pulan's husband lived. Pulan herself dragged him out of his house and stabbed him in front of the villagers. The gang left him lying almost dead by the road with a note warning older men not to marry young girls. The man survived but carried a scar running down his abdomen for the rest of his life. Pulan learned how to use a rifle from Vikram, participated in gangs activities across Bundelkhand, which is in the border of between Uttar Pradesh and Madhya Pradesh. These activities consisted of attacking and looting villages where upper caste people lived, kidnapping relatively prosperous people for ransom, and committing occasional highway robberies which targeted flashy cars. Pulan was the only women member of the gang of dacoits. After every crime, she visited a Durga temple and thanked the goddess for her protection. The gang's main hideouts were near the river of Chambal. Sometime later, Sri Ram and Lalla Ram, two upper caste Rajput brothers who had been caught by the police, were released from jail and came back to the gang. They were outraged to hear the murder of Babu Gujjar, their former leader, and held Pulan responsible for inciting the act. They berated her for being a divisive wanton, and she answered them back with her characteristic foulness of tongue. Sri Ram then held her by the cuff of the neck and slapped her hard, and a scuffle ensued. As the leader of the gang, Vikram Malla berated Sri Ram for attacking a woman and made him apologize to Phoolan Devi. Sri Ram and his brother smarted under this humiliation, which was further escalated by the fact that Pulan and Vikram both belonged to the Malla caste of boatmen, much lower than the land-owning Rajput caste to which they belonged. After this incident, whenever the gang ransacked a village, Sri Ram and Lalla Ram would make it a point to beat and insult Mallas of the village. This displeased the Malla members of the Bandit gang, many of whom left the gang. On the other hand, around a dozen of Rajputs joined the gang at the invitation of Sri Ram and Lalla Ram, and the balance of the power gradually shifted in the favor of Rajput caste. Vikram Malla then suggested that the gang be divided into two, one comprising mainly Rajputs and the other mainly Mallas. Sri Ram and Lalla Ram refused this suggestion on the grounds that the gang had always been included a mixture of castes during the days of Babu Gujjar and his predecessors, and there was no reason to change. Meanwhile, other Mallas were also not happy with Vikram Malla. A few days later, after the proposal for division had been floated, a quarrel ensued between Sri Ram and Vikram Malla. A gunfight ensued. Vikram and Pulan, who had no single supporter on their side, managed to escape in the dark. However, they were later tracked down and Vikram Malla was shot dead. Pulan was taken by victorious faction to Rajput-dominated village of Bemai, home to Sri Ram and Lalla Ram and several of the new Rajput recruits. Pulan was locked up in a room in one of the houses of Bemai village. She was beaten, raped, humiliated until she fell unconscious by many upper caste Thakur men over a period of 3 weeks. In a final act of indignity, they paraded her naked around the village. She then managed to escape after 3 weeks of captivity with the help of lower caste villager of Bemai and 2 Malla members from the According to legend, Vikram thought Phoolan Devi, if you are going to kill 20, not just one. For if you kill 20, your fame will spread. If you kill only one, they will hang you as a murderess. Biographer Mala Sen, whose book India's Bandit Queen, The True Story of Phoolan Devi, said, there are various versions of what happened to Phoolan Devi after Malla's death. When I spoke to her, she was reluctant to talk about her dishonor at the hands of Thakurs. She did not want to dwell on details and merely said, they had a lot of fun at my expense. After she escaped Bemai and joined another rival gang only to return several months later. When she returned, she was dressed in khaki coat, blue jeans and wearing bright lipstick. With a stun gun hanging from her shoulder, she called all the villagers out and asked them to hand over Sri Ram and Lalla Ram. The 2 men could not be found. So Phoolan Devi rounded up 22 other Thakur men, ordered them to kneel down and shot all of them dead. The Bemai massacre earned her the name Bandit Queen and led to massive shake-up in the government establishment. Chief Minister VP Singh resigned and the police doubled up the efforts to capture Phoolan Devi. In a column for Rediff.com, senior advocate Indira Jaisingh, who represented Phoolan Devi in her case against the producers of Bandit Queen, wrote, in many ways, I think she transcended the trauma of what happened to her. For many upper castes, Phoolan Devi was nothing more than a gruesome murderer. But for several others from the lower castes, she became a reincarnation of goddess Durga, someone who avenged the injustice meted out to her. 2 years after the massacre, Phoolan Devi decided to surrender to police. She was charged with 48 crimes, including 30 charges of dacoitry and kidnapping. The terms that Phoolan Devi was handed for arrest. She told journalist Mary Ann Weaver there were a lot. First and most important, I and my gang members would not be hanged, that we would be released from prison after 8 years, and that we would never be handcuffed and that we would be permitted to live in a prison together in a A-class jail, and that we would surrender only in Madhya Pradesh and never be extracted to Uttar Pradesh. In the same interview, she told Weaver that she was in jail for 11 years against the pronounced 8. Rest of her gang members went to Uttar Pradesh while Phoolan Devi refused because she knew she would be killed if she returned. Phoolan Devi later married Umed Singh. On February 15, 1995, Phoolan Devi and her husband Umed Singh embraced Buddhism at the famous Buddhist site Diksha Bhumi. In 1995, 1 year after her release, Phoolan Devi was invited by Dr. Ramadas, founder of Patali Makkal Kachi, to participate in the conference about the alcohol prohibition and women pornography. This was her first conference after her release, which began her political career. However, Pulan stood for election to the 11th Lok Sabha from Mirzapur constituency in Uttar Pradesh. She contested the election as a member of Samajwadi Party of Mulayam Singh Yadav, whose government had withdrawn all cases against her and released her from prison. She won the election and served as MP during the term of 11th Lok Sabha from 1996 to 1998. She lost a seat in 1998 election but was re-elected in 1999 election and was the sitting member of parliament for Mirzapur. On July 26, 2001 at 1:30 p.m., Phoolan Devi was shot dead by 3 masked men outside her Delhi bungalow. She was hit 9 times variously in the head, chest, shoulder and right arm. A personal security guard, Balinder Singh, was shot in her right chest and right arm, who returned fire with a 9mm service pistol when the gunmen fled the scene in Maruti 800 car. They abandoned the car midway and boarded a auto rickshaw. The police recovered a Webley and Scott pistol, an improvised firearm, and IOF-32 revolver from the spot, along with 9 empty and 15 live rounds from the car. Devi was taken to Ram Manohar Lohia Hospital but was declared dead. The prime suspect, Sher Singh Rana, later surrendered to police. Rana allegedly claimed to have murdered Devi in revenge for the upper caste men she gunned down in Baymai massacre. In an immediate aftermath of the murder, the police were accused of incompetence in their handling of the case. It was alleged that the party worker picked up revolvers that had been dumped by the killers and hid them. 3 other people staying in her house were accused of knowing the revolvers. The revolvers then disappeared before the police could conduct forensic tests on them. Sher Singh Rana, the main accused, was convicted by Delhi court on 8 August 2014. However, the other 10 accused were acquitted. Rana was convicted of the offences under Section 302 murder, 307 attempt to murder and 34 common intention under IPC. The judge had fixed 12th August 2014 as a date for arguments and the pronouncement of sentence. On 14th August 2014, Rana was sentenced to life term by Delhi court. Shekha Kapoor made a movie Bandit Queen in 1994 about Phoolan Devi's life up to her 1983 surrender, based on Mala Sen's 1993 book India's Bandit Queen, The True Story of Phoolan Devi. Although Phoolan Devi is the heroine in the film, she fiercely disputed its accuracy and fought to get it banned in India. She even threatened to immolate herself outside a theatre if the film were not withdrawn. Eventually, she withdrew her objection after the producer, Channel 4, paid her £40,000. The film brought her international recognition. In 1985, another low-budget Bengali movie, Phoolan Devi, was released loosely based on Phoolan's life. This film was directed by Ashok Roy and starred by Suresh Oberoi, Rita Bahaduri and Joy Banerjee. Although she was illiterate, Phoolan composed her autobiography entitled The Bandit Queen of India, an Indian woman's amazing journey from peasant to international legend, with the help of international authors like Mary Therese Cuny and Paul Ramberly. Today, Phoolan Devi is a sort of a cult icon. There are many books, plays, movies based on her life. She is remembered as an anti-caste feminist icon who fought against patriarchal society and brought justice to herself against the wrongs that were committed against her.